Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Today on Who Wrote the Bill, Jack and Nick had prior engagements. So I have some special guests today. I have brought in Shadow Fox from The Flow and Reggie Townsend. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
All right. And how is everybody doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. Can't complain. Looking forward to seeing what this bill's all about.
Oh,
Yeah, me too. And I'm loving it, man, because it's like I'm gonna sit back and just listen, and then I get to vote. Oh man, this is awesome.
Yeah. All right,
I might just mess with you a little bit.
Oh, I know, and that's always welcomed. That's always welcome. All right, I have a good bill today, so let us get into it right after Reggie tells us a little bit about himself. And you got a space coming up on Twitter Spaces, or X Spaces, I'm sorry.
Yes. Thank you, Paul. My name is Reggie. Currently living in Minnesota. I am a Marine and Army veteran. I served 2 tours in Iraq, 2006, 2007, and 2008, 2009. I served 11 years in the Marine Corps and 4 years in the Minnesota Army National Guard. I'm currently
welcome home.
Oh, thank you. Right now, my focus right now is doing all I can to preserve democracy. And right now, we see that our political climate is less than desirable. So I want to do my part and not be a bystander to make sure our democracy rights itself.
All right. And you're an independent, right?
I am.
Okay. And Shadow Fox, everyone knows her from The Flow. So if you haven't seen her on The Flow, check her out on The Flow. And Shadow Fox, you're an independent too, aren't you?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Oh, my. 3 independents today.
Hey, don't be taking my oh my's.
All righty. So let's get into this wonderful bill. I'm going to put this up. This is the summary of the bill. This bill establishes a grant program and allows other grants to be used to combat auto theft and stolen automobile trafficking. Specifically, the bill directs the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services within the Department of Justice to award grants for state and local law enforcement agencies to combat auto theft and stolen vehicle trafficking. Grant funds must be used for specified purposes, including to purchase equipment, hire additional law enforcement officers, and provide resources and training. The bill also allows funds under the Community-Oriented Policing Services granted program to be used to combat auto thefts and stolen automobile trafficking. So, this is a bill that's going to give money to law enforcement agencies to hire more officers, more equipment to try to help stop automobile trafficking. So, who do you think wrote the bill? Let's start with Shadow Fox, Democrat or Republican?
Well, can it be bipartisan?
It's who sponsored it.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't know. I'd probably say a Democrat.
Reggie, who do you think?
I think it's a Democrat.
You think it's a Democrat also? Okay.
I'd like to hear the nitty-gritty with it, though.
Well, we are going to get into the nitty-gritty.
Do I get to change that?
Yeah, you can change that.
Okay.
You can change that.
Just checking.
Yep. Hold on, I gotta get things situated here. All right, let me get over to the text of it and get set up so that you guys can't see the name of the bill, because you're supposed to guess who wrote the bill. Okay.
This is not just for a state bill, right? This is
through our Congress.
Okay.
House of Representatives.
Gotcha.
Okay. I am going to read the next part of this bill. Section 2, Auto Theft Prevention Grant Program. Establishment A. Not later than 60 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the Director of the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services of the Department of Justice shall establish an auto theft prevention program. We've already read this in the summary. Eligible recipient. The Director shall make grants under the program to the Attorney General of each state, with the amount awarded proportional to the overall level of auto thefts within each state in the year prior to the date of the disbursement of the grant. Are you both still Democrat on this?
I am.
I might be wavering a little bit.
Okay. Let's go to the next part, distribution of funds. Number 1, local law enforcement agencies. The Attorney General of a state shall make at least 50% of a grant awarded under the program available as competitive sub-grants to local law enforcement agencies to combat auto theft, with the amount awarded determined by prioritizing localities with a higher overall level of auto thefts in the year prior to the date of the disbursement of the program. State law enforcement agencies. The Attorney General of a state shall make at least 25% of a grant awarded under the program available to state law enforcement agencies to combat auto theft. And 3, other amounts. The Attorney General of a state shall make any proportion of the grant awarded under the program not allocated under paragraph 1 or 2, which I just read, available as competitive sub-grants to local law enforcement agencies or to state law enforcement agencies. Any sub-grant made under this paragraph to a local law enforcement agency shall follow the prioritization under paragraph 1. Still both Democrat, or are you still wavering, Shadow Fox?
I'm still kind of wavering, just a little bit.
Okay.
There's a reason within it, because a lot of the times when you first read something, it is presented in the terminology where it's like, oh yeah, everything sounds a-okay, and then you start hearing this, and I'm looking at the back end. I'm looking at where is the hidden agenda in this? Who's really going to benefit? So go ahead.
Okay, Reggie, still.
Yeah, I agree with her on that stance. Is who benefits from this, and from what I see, the states benefit from this the most, particularly their law enforcement. Their state police definitely would benefit from this, especially with auto theft. But I still think that this is a Democrat bill.
Okay. All right. Let's go to eligible activities. Amounts from a grant awarded under the program may only be used for the purpose of combating auto theft and combating stolen automobile trafficking, including purchasing equipment used to combat auto theft, such as law enforcement vehicles and license plate readers, and funding costs associated with that equipment, such as subscription fees and data storage fees for license plate readers. Number 2, hiring additional law enforcement officers and support staff to combat auto theft. Number 3, funding overtime costs and additional compensation for law enforcement officers and support staff involved in combating auto theft. Number 4, providing training for law enforcement officers and support staff to combat auto theft. Number 5, providing resources for joint task forces established to combat auto theft. Number 6, funding law enforcement data collection, data storage, and research activities related to combating auto theft. And number 7, the last one, funding for the administrative costs for applying for and implementing the grant up to a maximum of 5% of the grant amount. So let's start with Reggie this time. Democrat or Republican?
I'm still leaning Democrat on this.
Still leaning Democrat? Okay.
Republican.
Republican? Okay. We have Shadow Fox, who started as Democrat and is now leaning Republican.
I'm going to be all over the board.
Okay. Section E
No,
of this.
I do have a question though. Can you go back and read number 6?
Funding law enforcement data collection, data storage, and research activities related to combating auto theft.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That
Okay.
yeah, that I could see. Um,
Uh-huh.
I can see the reason why she went Republican there, and to me, that's a huge red flag
It's all
because
code.
especially when you're talking about data storage and data collection.
Okay. Let me read E before I go to section 3.
Okay.
Authorization of appropriations. This is authorized to be appropriated 30 million for each fiscal years 2024 through 2028 to carry out the program. Are we still Democrat, or are we going to Republican, or are we Republican going back to Democrat? Reggie.
Okay, just with that amount, definitely Republican. Definitely. I'm switching just
Okay.
because of the amount right there.
Shadow
That and paragraph 6.
Okay. Shadow Fox.
I'm still gonna go Republican, but then it could be a swing thing because you have the money. I think it's too much regulation and control for me. I mean, there's so many little hanging little participles here.
Okay. Well, you're going to love this one. Section 3. Additional authorized uses of COPS grant program funds.
Oh my.
Section
no.
1701B.
You're going down a freaking rabbit hole.
Section 1701B of the Ominous Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968, United States Code 34-10381B is amended by redesignating paragraph 23 as paragraph 24 and paragraph 22 by striking 21 and inserting 22, by redesignating paragraph 22 as paragraph 23, and by inserting after paragraph 21 the following. 22. To combat auto thefts and stolen automobile trafficking by purchasing equipment, hiring law enforcement officers and support staff, covering overtime and officer compensation costs, expanding access to training initiatives, funding joint task force, and funding law enforcement data collection and research activity related to auto thefts. Are we what side are we on now? Shadow Fox, you go first this time.
I have no freaking clue, because that was a freaking ping pong. Like, I mean, talk about diversion for every conceivable way. I'm like, do people really talk like this? I mean, X paragraph this, paragraph 6. Well, let's X this one, and we're going to amend that one, but we're going to bring it back, and this is what it's all about. No, there's too much politicking in that one.
Yes, because this is changing the United States Code. So,
yeah,
are you with Republican or Democrat, or are you wavering again?
Oh God, I think I'll just stick with the Republican on this. I mean, yeah.
Okay, Reggie.
I'm definitely gonna say Republican. I mean, there's the thing that strikes me on this is, of course, changing the U.S. Code. And obviously, the stance that they're pro on law enforcement. I think this bill probably helps enforce that. And it's got to be a moderate Republican who wrote this bill. I don't see anybody from the Freedom Caucus or anybody in the extreme right writing something like this. It just wouldn't happen.
Okay.
Yeah, well, when bills are coming in, there's definitely either there's an addition to, or in many different cases, I mean, they're reestablishing stuff, or they're ixnaying what was. You know, it's just like the terminology. I recognize the legalese within it, but really, wow.
Okay. Now, Section 4 is just the definitions, and I'm going to briefly read those just in case somebody in our audience does not understand what these definitions are. Local law enforcement agency means the term local law enforcement agency means any entity administered by a locality that exists primarily to prevent and detect crime and enforce criminal laws. Locality, the term locality means any city, county, township, town, borough, parish, village, or other general purpose political subdivision of a state. State means the District of Columbia. Means any state in the United States, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, America Samoan, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. And state, local, or state law enforcement agency means any state entity that exists primarily to prevent and detect crimes and enforce criminal laws. So, and that's standard when you're breaking down law enforcement. Yeah. Okay, so that's boilerplate. Okay, so let me remove this. Are we still Republican? Shadowfox?
Yeah.
Reggie?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay. Let me get it up here to the big reveal.
We're both wrong, Reggie. You know that, right? He only pulled this bill up to like, all he would have had to do is read that.
Oh, it was a Democrat.
HR 847 Auto Theft Prevention Act. Representative Mickey Sherrill, Democrat, New Jersey, District 11.
Okay, so then let me ask you a question on that. In that region, obviously, they may have a heck of a lot more stolen cars than where maybe perhaps the rest of us live. However, if this person is a Democrat and trying to bring this bill forward, is like there like big money behind that?
Yes, there is.
Because now, I mean, like for real, it just the way of the writing of it. I usually tend to not necessarily dive into something, go rah siskumbah, this bill is freaking great. You read the fine print, but I'm still looking at the end result. Where is the hidden agenda for why this bill would end up taking all this time and effort to write it and everything else? I'm sorry, there's just a feeling that whether that money can be diverted to go someplace else than what it is appropriated for, perhaps. I don't know.
Right.
I'm sorry. It smells fishy to me.
No, that's okay. Before I do the reveal here, do you think it's partisan bill or bipartisan?
I do think that there could be a little bit of the partisan in it, but I would still go, I don't care who wrote that specifically, but I do have a feeling it would be more on the Republican Party that would benefit.
Okay, so you think
money-wise, big tier.
There's 9 co-sponsors, so you're thinking the majority of those co-sponsors are Republican?
I do think it's kind of a bipartisan, but maybe more in the lines of the Republican behind it.
Okay, Reggie.
I say this is probably bipartisan, but I think it'll definitely have more Democratic support. Based on the fact that it's going to meet the needs more in Democratic heavy cities, because if you look at the statistics when it comes to auto theft, they usually happen more in heavy populated cities, especially Democratic cities, like cities in New Jersey, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, stuff like that. So you're definitely going to see a lot more support coming from the Democrats, but I think this will be bipartisan.
And I thought that was complete opposite.
Okay.
Seriously, with hang on, with all like the crime and everything else, but again, we may be declaring what form of crime. But I thought that would have been exactly opposite to what Reggie said.
We have, of the 9, 8 Democrats, 1 Republican. We have 1 Republican, Don Bacon from Representative Republican in Nebraska. We have the rest are Democrats. Angie Craig, Minnesota, District 2. Yeah. Josh Gottheimer, New Jersey, District 5. Andy Kim, New Jersey, District 3. David Trone, Maryland, District 6. Josh Harder, California, District 9. Greg Landsman, Ohio, District 1, Glenn Ivy, Maryland, District 4, and Gabe Vasquez, New Mexico, District 2.
So it was more leaning for the Democrat than the Republican. Okay.
Yes. Yes. So
Absolutely, because if you look at not only the people that are co-sponsoring, because it makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
but also look at who created the bill. I mean, like I said, it'll mostly benefit Democrat cities. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that Republicans don't in their cities and in their communities that they don't experience car theft, but this would definitely benefit Democrat cities a heck of a lot more.
Right. Now, let's get back into the text of it, because when I first started reading this, and just so you know, it's really, really hard to find a Democratic bill to bring up here that isn't going to scream Democrat, okay? When you're looking through the bills and you're reading them, the majority of them either scream Republican or Democrat. So to find one that you might be able to pull off that, you know, it might confuse people. First of all, everyone thinks that here, let me remove this real quick. Everyone thinks that Democrats want to defund the police, which here we're showing that Democrats are wanting to fund the police, and they're wanting to increase the amount of law enforcement and let them buy more toys. Okay. That in itself is usually going to scream Republican because of the persona that people believe that Democrats want to defund them, which is not true.
It's not true.
Okay. So there's a lot of reorganization of money and a lot of redistribution of money and how we're utilizing the money. And that's what Democrats want to see. Republicans, they also want to see this. So there's a lot of bipartisanship when it comes to funding the police for certain things. Now, where we fund them and how we fund them, there's where a difference of opinion is going to start to come into play. All right?
And this was only for car theft.
Right. Where Democrats
where
where Democrats are going to want like body cams, okay? Things to hold to account, where Republicans are going to want more guns and ammo. So that's kind of when you start reading through the different bills, these are the things that you're going to start to see become a commonality. Okay.
Right.
So on this bill, it's called Auto Theft Prevention Act. Now, when we were reading through it, this entirety of Section 2, for, you know, who the money's going to go to, that could have been either or, Democrat or Republican. Okay. I don't have any qualms with any of that. I don't have any problems with the percentages. Remember, local law enforcement agencies will be getting 50% of the grant money, where state will get 25%. And then basically the other aspect is going to be rural, is when you get down to it and you break it down, because you're looking at the outskirts of your cities.
Right.
Okay. So do you guys see any problems with this aspect of money distribution?
No, I honestly don't, in particular with the percentages, mostly because of the fact that most auto thefts are investigated at the local level anyway. The problem is that because of the lack of funding, they really don't have the manpower to investigate auto thefts. They got to treat them like somebody, like say somebody broke into my place, right? And I call the police. They don't have a task force that handles, you know, home theft and burglary. They don't. So they may have a violent crime task force, but they don't have a task force that handles home invasions, just like they don't have anything that handles auto theft at the local level. So I think this would be, I think it's great and it's beneficial for those local law enforcement since it's being investigated at that level anyway.
Right.
So let me ask you a question. I mean, as far as it goes with auto theft, well, I guess it would depend on how old the vehicle is, but most of these vehicles have, I mean, come on, they get, you know, hooked up to the satellite in some form or fashion, and I'm sure that people can go in there and maybe disable it or whatever, but at some point, it's like we in our everyday lives, we are so watched in every single capacity. We're, phone conversations, every they tell you, oh no, you have to get, through the law, you have to get this and this. Well, yeah, right. Oh, come on. They're watching your reactions through a TV, right? So, like, did you pay attention? Did your eyes move when this ad came on? All the smart TVs. They got smart cars. I mean, really? And so, for as far as the car theft goes, the industry, there's, whether there's big money behind it, yeah, well, we're going to steal a car, we'll rack it down, sell out the parts, sell whatever. There are so many different things. I mean, come on, there's codes in the engine block to say whose car or what engine is in it. I think that it's a good I think it's good that they're trying to do something and move something forward. But before I could kind of like sign off on this bill, I probably would have to do a little more research to really see how prevalent you know auto theft is. I mean, it depends on what state you're in, but if car's stolen, usually you have insurance or coverage for that. So I may be very ignorant in regards to how this bill is coming forward, but I'm
See,
something's tied up. I'm sorry, I
well,
don't like where that money allocation. There's something, I don't know what it is. I
you
just don't.
you brought up a point here, and let me expound on that because the car theft industry is huge, and there's a
Yes.
lot of money to be made into it.
Mhm.
And they know how to hack cars. They know how to
Yep.
disengage the GPS
Yep.
and the tracking
Yep.
system and stuff like that. Who do you think is, because you actually mentioned it, who do you think is going to lobby to have this kind of law enforcement done?
The Republicans.
No, I'm talking
Oh.
what industry? What
Oh,
industry? Because
industry.
it's going to be lobbied. It's going to be lobbied.
Well, the thing is, probably the insurance companies,
Bingo.
because if cars are stolen or wrecked, it's like, oh yay, we get to sell you a new one.
Right, but the insurance company now has to foot that bill.
Yep.
Okay. And there's legal expense because now were you negligent? Did you leave it unlocked? Did you park it in an area where you shouldn't be parking it? So now it becomes a battle. So there's where
It's all our fault that our car was
right.
stolen.
So you have to look at who's going to be coming after,
Yeah.
who's going to be lobbying for this kind of increase in law enforcement directed strictly at this illegal industry of car trafficking.
Okay, so then why is there not something written within the bill with all that money? All that money is going to be allocated here. We're going to train people. We're going to train the police in order to detect where your car is, right? Well, what if somebody had their car stolen and they can't go to work because they live in the boondocks and the car's gone and there's no public transportation? I mean, not everybody lives in the city, okay? So
Insurance.
shouldn't some of that money be allocated to those people who have their vehicle freaking stolen?
That's what the insurance company's for, because the insurance company's supposed to provide you with a rental car or something like that so that you can continue your day. So again, insurance companies, all the cost falls on the insurance company. So now the insurance company wants less auto theft so that they don't have to pay out as much in auto theft.
Yeah. Like I said, somewhere money's going.
Yep. Reggie, go ahead.
Yeah. So one thing also I think that may be influencing this congressman's decision to come up with this bill is also statistical data. to support the need for this bill, not just lobbying, because obviously insurance companies lobbying is going to play a huge part into the
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think also if you have Congress looking at the data and car thefts in particular, according to statistical data, since 2019, car thefts has gone up 104.3% since 2019.
Okay.
And this time last year, car thefts have went up 100% compared to 2022. And so far, car thefts has gone up roughly 34% since the past year. So we're talking about not only insurance companies possibly lobbying,
Yeah.
but you may also have his constituency complaining that, hey, my district is vulnerable to car theft. So that may be a hot button issue with this congressman, and maybe his constituency may be lobbying and saying, hey, we need something. Or maybe that, because there's a lot of factors that come into it.
Yeah.
And I agree that insurance companies definitely will lobby when it comes to this because it's costing them a lot of money. Because if you think about it, not only are they paying to replace the car at the full value of the replacement of the vehicle if the vehicle's not found or the vehicle was dismembered at a chop shop or something like that. You're also talking about a rental, and that goes for a good amount of money because they're paying for that every day, minus the cost of fuel. Minus the cost of fuel. So I mean, there's a huge cost that comes with this. So I believe that this congressman is probably getting it from both sides, not just the insurance company, but their constituency at the same time. So I mean, and in 32 cities alone, this went up 100% since 2022. So this is a big deal. And maybe some of those members of Congress, particularly those 9 who co-sponsored, probably are feeling the pinch from their constituency as well because of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know
We never know.
And I know when I was living in Las Vegas, there's some of the parking ramps of some of the casinos would tell you to make sure you locked your vehicle because car theft. And we actually had at different casinos security guards that literally walked through the parking lots, drove through, and watched for suspicious activity because the parking garages were a easy target to steal cars. And that's where a lot of the auto theft in Vegas occurs, is in the parking ramps, not in front of people's homes. So
one other thing too, if you don't mind me interjecting real quick. One thing I've noticed too is that I don't know if you guys, depending on what model vehicles you guys drive, it's none of my business, but newer cars as of late have been coming out, like 2015 and higher model vehicle and newer model vehicles are coming out with ways to be able to find your vehicle depending on what kind of devices you have. Like, say, for example, if you have a smartphone and you have your phone attached to a system like Android Play or CarPlay, Apple CarPlay or Android Play, it'll allow you to be able to show the last known location of your vehicle before it was taken or moved. And sometimes you'll still be able to find it depending on where it's at and how far off it went. So that's something that people could look at. And I think that still has a lot to do with the data collection. And that's probably why that's in the bill itself, because of the fact that if, say, for example, a person calls the police and says, hey, my car's been stolen, and they look at data collection from that person, because local law enforcement has to get involved, of course, then of course the data collection may come into play in that situation where they need to get that person's data to be able to help them find that car if they have that in that vehicle. Correct.
Along with having a task force that can actually find out where the chop shop's at, where the cars are being taken to. Then you're also looking at other things like there's cars that have low jack on them. There's people that put their own little trackers on their vehicles to make sure. So GPS tracking comes into play on a multitude of things. And then you're also looking at vehicles like Tesla, which, all the cameras that are on Tesla, I mean, they have like 8 cameras or something, So stealing a Tesla is going to be a lot harder than stealing, say, whatever the number one car is. So you're also going to be looking at technical technological advances by car manufacturers to make their cars more safe, especially as the crime rate's going up with stolen vehicles.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and nowadays with the chop shops, to your point about the chop shops, I think that what most people don't realize is that car theft, like most crime situations of crime, this is like almost $1 million industry, maybe
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Especially with the type of cars that are being stolen nowadays, because
Yeah.
even stealing something as significant as a catalytic converter on a car costs a lot of money. Just one catalytic converter on a car costs a ton of money because of the resources that are on that catalytic converter alone.
Right. Go ahead,
Yes.
Shadowbox.
Yeah, no, and also it's like you had made a mention of it, the model of the car. So what those models, if they have the statistics on it, okay, so Fords or Chevys, whatever, which one gets stolen more? When you think about it, it's like we have we pay insurance, and so if we purchase a vehicle which is known to be stolen more often than not, then you might have to think about, why would you purchase one of those vehicles?
Well,
there's things that we can do as people, individual people, but as far as this bill goes, I think they're still trying to put a band-aid on in one aspect, where I believe that there could be many different fractions from this, like for the cars, to make sure that the cars perhaps are a little harder to to rip off.
But that falls on the manufacturer, though.
Exactly. And so there could be different implementations of things, but I do know people can steal a car in 30 seconds. I watched a movie once, or maybe it was 60 seconds.
Yeah, Gone in 60 seconds.
See, I watched a movie.
I know when my wife bought her Kia Soul, the insurance was higher on it because it was up in one of those top cars being stolen at the time. So the insurance was higher. And again, I didn't do my research on whether or not the Kia Soul that my wife wanted was a highly, susceptible to being stolen.
Right.
I didn't give that a thought, and neither does most people when they go buy a car. They're not looking into that. Are there people that look into that? Absolutely, but not the majority. Otherwise, whatever the number one car is, people would just quit buying that for a year.
Yeah.
Nobody would buy it. Well, if that actually happened, then the manufacturer would spend the extra money to make it harder for their car to be stolen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you see, so this again is part of the system and all that. You got constituents that are calling and complaining, and this is going to be the result of passing a law to give law enforcement more money to actually look into this and help prevent it. And quite frankly, I think that's a good thing, since the manufacturers aren't doing anything. And obviously the insurance companies, I have no sympathy for insurance companies. They do everything they can to get out of paying things. So they need to pay more often. But I want to go back to this bill real quick, because when we were looking at it, number 6 was the one that we were saying, Republican, funding law enforcement data collection, data storage, and research activities related to combating auto theft. That is what Reggie just brought up on, which justifies number 6. Okay. So that makes it important. Outside of that, and I know Section 3, because of the change in the United States Code, to combat auto thefts and stolen automobile trafficking by purchasing equipment, hiring law enforcement officers and support staff, covering overtime and officer compensation costs, expanding access to training initiatives, funding joint task forces, and funding law enforcement data collection. These are actually important things, because what this does is, let's say you have your local law enforcement and they feel like they have encountered a car trafficking ring. And now they notify the state. And the state starts looking into it, and they realize that it's going across state lines. So now they can contact the FBI. And this is going to allocate funding to be able to form that task force with multiple law enforcement agencies to eventually get to the root of who it is that's stealing the vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Do you think? So do you think if we're looking at the bottom dollar, do you think the insurance agencies will kind of lower their costs if this is implemented because this
No.
law would? Oh, okay.
No, they're still going to keep.
I was hoping wishful thinking.
They're going to keep raising their prices and all that.
Yeah.
The last aspect that we talked about on this was it was E. Where is that? There it is. E. Let me go back to that. E. Let me make that bigger for everybody. There is authorized to be appropriated $30 million for each of fiscal years 2024 through 2028 to carry out the program.
Wow.
Now, that's for all 50 states. That's
Okay.
not per state. That's for all states. 30 million is a drop in the bucket.
True.
30 million is a drop in the bucket. This is not even a large amount of money for what's being asked. This is minimal compensation for what they want to perform in this. There needs to be another zero on there. It should be 300 million, if you ask me.
Okay.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking, again, this goes back to my point earlier, when you're talking about cities that are very high and robust in population, where the car thefts are huge. They may need more manpower. They may need to pull from their current, from their current numbers, anybody that may be interested in joining that task force as well. So that's something to keep in mind too, because you want veteran officers to head this task force, especially in high cities like Minneapolis, St. Paul, even Lincoln, Nebraska, or Omaha, areas where there may be, high car thefts. So especially when you're talking about the type of cars that are being stolen. I think most of the cars that are being stolen are older model vehicles that don't have those, like to Paul's point that he was saying earlier, that doesn't have that carjacking, that doesn't have those detection devices where you can actually find the vehicle when it's been stolen or out of range.
Right. And the other thing that I'm going to bring into this is I want you to think about the numbers here, okay? If you're going to create, let's say we're at whatever city you're in, and they're going to create a task force, okay? You're going to need at least 8 people because you're talking 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And now I was a bounty hunter. I know what it is to surveil a place where you're sitting there for 8, 10, 12 hours watching and waiting for anything. Okay. So when you start looking at law enforcement, you're going to need at least an 8-man crew to form a task force. And at the average pay of $50,000 a year, that's $400,000 a year for an 8-man crew. All right. So if you take that 400,000 and you multiply that by the 50 states, you're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6, $20 million. And now that's only for one city.
Yeah.
In each of the 50 states.
And they did mention overtime, by the way.
Right. Right. And I'm just keeping it at 8-hour shifts, 8-man crew. And again, the biggest city of each state where this is going to be taking place, it's minimally going to run $20 million.
Yeah. Like I said, it's like a Band-Aid.
Yeah. Yeah. So it definitely needs more funding. Mm-hmm. So, anybody else have any comments on this bill before I go to the next question on it?
Yeah, I have something, and this goes to your point, Paul, about the funding. I've looked at the statistical data for cars that are actually being stolen. The number one car that's stolen in this country so far is the full-size Chevy pickup. That is the number one car being stolen. It is not the number one car being sold. The number one car being sold is the Honda Accord. However, the number one car being stolen this year is a tie between the Dodge Charger SRT Hellcat and the Dodge Charger with the Hemi. Now, the Chevy full-size pickup, so far in 2022 alone, 50,000 of them have been stolen. And when you look at the statistical data now compared to 2022, we're talking about for every 100,000 of them that are sold, 886 of them are being stolen.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's the full-size Chevy pickup. I mean, the numbers are up there. Like, it's significant. And one of the biggest one that's being stolen is the Chevy Silverado. That's the number one pickup truck that's being stolen.
Wow.
Okay.
And I want you to really think about this. There's a lot of people that when they own a pickup truck, that's their work.
Yes.
Okay. When people own a truck, it's usually because they use it for work of some sort, whether it's landscaping, whether it's plumbing, whether it's construction, whether it's whatever. People utilize trucks. Now, granted, there are people that get trucks because I want a truck, but okay. And I was one of those people. I had a Dodge Ram. Okay, I had a Dodge Ram. I think it was a 1500 or a 150, whatever. Yeah, it was a 1500. A Dodge Ram, and when I got it, it's because I wanted a truck. And when I got it, I then utilized it for work. It was great for hauling stuff. It was phenomenal. So even people that get it because they just I want a truck, they still end up using it for work.
Can you say that again?
I want a truck. All right. So my next question: red flag, yellow flag, green flag. Should this bill become law?
I think I'd give it a go. I think something should be done. And besides, if there has to be little tweaks to it or something, I mean, just go back into what was it, E, where all these things were just, I'd go for a green one.
That should be amended, definitely.
Yeah.
For me, I say yellow flag, and the main reason why is because of the lack of funding, especially when you're talking about going to all 50 states and how much money is being allocated. I think he should have gotten more aggressive in the funding and putting it, like Paul said, put another zero on there. 300 million. Asking for 30 million. That if you were funding one state for that, then that, to me, that's a state's issue. You would talk to the governor and see if they could allocate $30 million to their local law enforcement to create a task force. That's fine. But when you're talking about the federal government sending money to create a task force, and you're talking about paying overtime for these officers, working 24/7 on this task force to stop auto thefts throughout the country and reduce the number of auto thefts across the country, $30 million is not going to cut it. So this is a yellow flag for me, just because of the lack of funding.
I think I can see your point of view on that. I really can. And I think that the way our government is functioning right now, if they were able to get something through, is better than nothing, or that status quo. And I think it's just gonna, I don't think the right or the left actually knows how to tie their shoes. Okay. You know, I mean, one side might have the work boot on and the other one might have the high heel, and they're trying to dance. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. And so I think yeah, put some more zeros on it. But until that can be appropriated, I think if it moves forward, it shows, let's just say, good faith, perhaps. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I really don't.
It's still just an introduced bill. It
Yep.
hasn't gone any further than just being introduced. It
Yep.
hasn't even been brought up on the floor, nor will it be brought up on the floor. Because
Exactly.
again, it's a Democratic bill, and McCarthy won't allow it. But that's another story for another time. I give it a green flag,
Yeah.
even at the 30 mil, only because it goes from
Yeah.
2024 to 2028. And I think that if they can see that it is doing something, but
Yep.
they can then apply for more funding after 2028.
Yeah.
I think that getting it
Yeah.
legislated
Established.
and established as a law, I think it would be a good thing. So I would give it a green flag on that. But I am with Reggie.
Yeah.
It's a yellow flag because of funding, but
Yes.
if it only goes to 2028, I'll give it a green because I think that once it's been initiated and they can
Yeah.
see that it is doing some good, if they could get some good out of it, I think it could increase its funding.
Yeah.
That I do agree on.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to 2028, if they do decide to say bring it up in a congressional hearing and talk to local law enforcement or even attorney generals throughout the states, and if they find that this legislation is passed and then the funding starts to run out, and next thing you might know, they're talking about appropriating more money for it.
Yeah.
The one thing I'd like to see is the statistics, the numbers, to see if it's working. That would be huge because
Yeah.
if they do create a task force within these local law enforcement agencies and the state does support this and they see results, that they see that auto thefts are coming down as a result of it, I think it would definitely be great. So I guess I'll have that wait and see approach, but I'm optimistic about it. Even if it doesn't pass the 118th Congress, because to see Shadow Fox's point, the way this political climate is, I don't think a Democrat could pass gas in the House, much less a bill.
Right. Right.
I love it. No, if when we started, we each kind of declared and we said we were, independent, and we all went forward that it's like a green flag to go, but all of us kind of gave them that caution because of the funding. I wonder if there was someone on the panel that was a Republican and then someone who was a hardcore Democrat, for instance, if they'd agree on that at all.
Well, here's the thing. I've been doing this now. This is my third week in doing this. And when we break down the bills, they don't know who wrote it. And we start breaking it down and we point out the bad and the good. And people are talking about how this isn't good. This is kind of shady. This is this. This is this. So I think what we find out, and the whole purpose of this is to bring people together and show them what is being written in Congress.
Yeah.
And once you see it and you don't know who wrote it, you're going to pick up on things that, hey, I don't like this, or I don't like that, or I think this is good. I think this is bad. I think this is this. And you're going to get a more honest opinion because if you know who wrote it to begin with,
you create a bias.
Right. So I think if we had a actual Republican in the room and we broke this down and I didn't reveal it until we went completely through it like we just did, we were all pretty much in agreement before I broke it down.
Yeah.
But if I wouldn't have revealed and we would have broke it down first, I even think a Republican would have thought this was a good bill.
Yeah.
Let
me ask you, is there anybody like for the districting where you said this was coming out from New Jersey?
Yeah, New Jersey, District 11.
So is there are are they looking for re-election? Any of them? Is this a reason, in part, perhaps, that they're stimulating this bill to go somewhere or writing it? Is it just trying to pacify, their constituents, or what?
Well, let me see. I hit the wrong button. Hold on. Is Mickey Sherrill of New Jersey running for re-election in the House? Oh, it's being stubborn.
It doesn't. I was just wondering, because I do know sometimes, these, within the political arena, it's like, oh yeah, please, vote for me and we'll go fight for you. Well, that's what they do. As they continue, they spend so much energy fighting with each other, nothing gets done until it's about time for a re-election, and then it's like, oh well, by the way, yeah, we proposed a bill.
Okay, she was elected in 2019 to president, so she's going to be the.
She's working on something.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so I think she's going to be running for re-election. I don't see her stepping down.
Okay. All right.
And quite frankly, I don't think anybody would probably run against her in a primary. So
All right.
I think it's pretty safe to say that she's going to be running for re-election.
Okay. Well, Paul, thank you. This was fun.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
So anybody have any questions, thoughts, or closing ideas?
Just a thought. First off, I wanted to say thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ms. Shadow Fox, for this opportunity to be on and talk to you too. And this was definitely, in all intents and purposes, regardless of how I look at this bill, I think it's a good bill. And I do hope for its passage. If it doesn't pass in the 118th Congress, I hope that that it'll be looked at and revisited again in the 119th Congress. So I hope that that members of Congress that are bipartisan looking at this bill, especially the co-sponsors, that they don't give up on this legislation. And hopefully with re-election, that they all can look at the passage of this bill in the next Congress if it doesn't go anywhere in this Congress. So I'm optimistic about it, though.
All right. Any final thoughts from you, Shadow Fox?
Oh, no, I think I'll just zip it.
Okay. All right. Don't take off as I close out. We'll have a little after show conversation.
All
right. And I would like to thank everybody that came in on YouTube and Twitter and Twitch. Thank you for your support. And remember, be happy, be kind, and may good things come your way. Thank you.
Yeah.